Okay, hello guys, welcome. This is the first drafting video we are doing here on FabChaos. So I have recorded the drafting process of the whole draft, and we will walk through every single pack and every single pick. So here we start off the first pack. Outside this draft is pretty interesting, so we might start doing more stuff like that. So here there is probably one pretty strong generic card and a pretty strong ranger card. I've seen that Melting Point is one of those cards that actually want to put you into ranger. The non-attacks are a little bit more important than the arrows, because if ranger is open enough, you are supposed to get some red arrows for somewhat free. So missing on a 1 for 6 generic card is not the end of the world, while having access to Melting Point is pretty relevant. It's good in both Azalea and Riptide, but it looks like that it's a bit stronger in Azalea than it is on Riptide, because actually having the plus power to give dominate to your strong effects, it's pretty relevant in draft. So here and back to the first thing I want to do is to try and figure out what the person to my left picked. So I want to see what's the rares, what's the dual class cards, and it looks like there is a generic missing, so not too much information. So we do have, I see another premium ranger non-attack card, so I'm pretty happy that I can see a Lace with Frailty. So here I can choose between picking one of the weaker traps and Lace with Frailty, but I'm super happy with keeping up the second copy of a premium non-attack for ranger. It's important also to somewhat give a signal of what I'm passing to my right, because so far we haven't passed any great ranger cards, so the best cards have to be the red stealth card, the trap, and the peace of mind. So I do not give any strong indications to the players to my right that I might be going towards, that I'm not letting ranger seem open. So here we have a lot of powerful cards. There is one of the most premium generics, the Looking for Scrap Red. There is a red Surging Strike, a lot of powerful cards, but since we want to cut access to ranger, we want to probably prevent the other players from getting premium ranger cards. So again, we are trying to look what's missing. We do not have way many strong indications here again, but I'm happy that they look like that there are a lot of premium ranger cards. So the players to my left might be trying to give me the impression that ranger is open. So here I think the best ranger card has to be Bloodred Trap, and here is the decision between a good generic or a good ranger card. Bloodred Trap has to be one of the strongest ones, because rangers somewhat struggle versus assassins, so it's pretty important to have the first copy of it. So here, now it's the first weak pack, and even though Silken Yi is a great card, I'm most likely going to end up on ranger. So I did not pick that card pretty high, because the best chest equipment that ranger has access to is not Silken Yi. So we try to see, it feels like Ninja is open. We are really not happy about that, and it's the first pack that actually feels super dry regarding ranger. It might just be a weak pack though, so it's honestly a decision between the blue Withering Shot and the yellow Virulent Touch. I'm not sure yet if I want to go down the Riptide or Azalea path, so Virulent Touch is way better on Riptide, while the arrow is better for Azalea, but overall getting your blue cards and getting your blue cards arrow, it's something that will happen naturally. Most of the time you're not missing that if ranger seems open, and ranger felt so far open. So again, ninja seems super open, a lot of premium ranger cards are still here. The mask is great, and it's unfortunately is one of the headpiece that we cannot play. It's the assassin one. So here finally we have another ranger card, and Withering Shot is one of the better ranger arrow cards. So even though ninja seems super open, and that's not a good sign, we really want to get as many arrows as possible. Remember that getting fatigued is a real problem with rangers in draft, so at the moment we have enough good non-attacks, so we want to prioritize red arrows pretty high. Again, this is a dry pack. We are getting closer to the second cycle of the pack, so packs are a lot weaker at the moment, so it makes sense to have a lot of blue cards. But that's the thing, you might get a lot of blue cards towards the end stages of the game. So Spar Sniping, it's actually the first great card we see for Xalea. So far we are pretty happy with our draft. We have a clear direction. Ranger might not be super open at the moment, but we have sent quite strong signals to the right that no good Ranger cards have passed through us. And here, this is the first pack that we have a blank card, and here most of the time is the point where you want to get your blue 3-block arrow cards. So here it's between getting a mediocre generic versus getting a 3-block card, but since we have not picked any blue cards so far, and Falcon Wing is a decent filler because sometimes you can just put it in arsenal and throw it for free, it's not a bad blue arrow to have access to. So the picks from now on are going to be a bit more simpler because we just want to see what's open. We might get some indication if our assumption so far is correct, if Ninja is open, so we want to keep denying the Ranger cards. So here it feels like Ninja is open. There are a lot of blue cards that are relevant for Ninja, and here it's between the Secure Equipment and the blue arrow. So I have 0 copies of Peace of Mind so far. Because I have 0 copies of Peace of Mind, I don't prioritize Secure Meats too highly. I prefer to make the signal of Ranger being not open way stronger and actually having access to premium 3-block blue cards. So that if I had a single copy of Peace of Mind, I would probably pick the Secure Equipment, but I want to deny every single arrow. And because now Scout the Periphery yellow is not great, actually using a card for value of just 2. So, and I also want to have a pretty high arrow number as well. I prefer the Withering Shot over the Scout the Periphery. Withering Shot is great because with a name counter or something like that, the effect is pretty annoying versus assassins and ninjas. So if it was probably any other arrow or not the Bloodrot arrow, if it was in the Inertia arrow or something like that, Sedation Shot, I would probably pick the Scout the Periphery, but Withering Shot is great. Okay, here we see a Fist Cuffs. That's probably one of the worst equipments you can play in Ranger, but in order to get a random bad blue, I think I prefer having the Fist Cuffs. It's fine sometimes to use as a sink, as a mana sink that we say, as a way to overpitch and make, you know, an annoying hit effect go through, and we already have some annoying hit effects. So if we get a 4-card hand or something, it's pretty relevant to be able to pay for an additional 2. And this is a bad spotter. Ninja feels way open, so we really hope that the person to our right ends up getting into Ninja, because we want to give them, I don't want to cut any Ninja cards at the moment. I want to show to the players to my right and my left that Ninja, I want Ninja to stay open, because I don't want to compete with the 3rd or maybe 4th Ranger of the draft. I want to be able to get all the premium red arrows. So again, 3 Ninja cards, that's pretty bad. I just pick one of the weakest cards from the pack in order to show this, try to give the sign to my player to my right that Ninja is still open. Please get into Ninja. That's literally the thinking. So Brush of Blue is another sign that Ninja is open, because it's one of the premium blues for Ninja, because it costs 0. Here it's the first time we can finally see what we have drafted so far. So we have a lot of premium red arrows, we have the Virulent Touch, we have a few blues. The draft is looking pretty great. Our deck is not insane at the moment, but we do have a lot of premium cards, and the gamble that we took off during the beginning of the draft ended up paying off. Ended up so that Ranger felt quite open, and now we are at the position where we know we are in Ranger, we just want to fight off. I'm not sure if I want to go into Azalea or Riptide yet, because we do not have many ways of looking at the top of our deck, which is pretty relevant. Honestly, Azalea is a little bit harder to pull off most of the time, but it's not like we have many cards that are great with Riptide either. We do not have many ways of extending with and attacking with 4 cards or more, so I'm probably looking a bit more towards gearing Azalea. So here, Seek Horizon, Sedation Shot has to be one of the weakest red arrows in the set, Inertia not being so relevant, so Seek Horizons is actually the first card that gives me a clear sign that I want to get into Azalea. And again, I don't think equipment to be super premium. I also have an equipment in gloves already, so if I see a trend at some point, we might consider taking it, but because we already have a gloves equipment, even though it's a bad one, I prefer getting a good card that will actually make my deck work, rather than having a slightly better equipment than the one we already have. Because also with Rangers, getting fatigued is a real problem, so having Seek Horizons is one of the few cards that can actually give Azalea an offensive 4-card hand. Because you can Seek Horizons, put a card on top of your deck, pitch a blue, put the random arrow in arsenal, Azalea, give a name counter to the arrow you put it on the top of your deck, give it dominate and attack for hopefully 6 dominate with an extra effect, which is a pretty great 10 damage with with a hit effect. It's actually a decent turn. I'm super happy here that it looks like that the Ranger cutting paid off, because here we see 2 pretty great Ranger cards, Lace with Inertia, Inertia Trap, and the headpiece of Rangers. So Lace with Inertia has to be the best one, because again, I think that the non-attacks are a bit more important than the attacks on a Ranger deck. It's way easier you don't really care about the arrows. Bloodrot arrow is great, but everything else is pretty replaceable. So having the 3rd premium non-attack has to feel great at this point. And I'm also happy that I keep cutting and giving the signals to the players to my left that Ranger might not be super open, so if a player to my left was in between of pivoting to Ninja or not, I want to make sure that they will pivot into Ninja or something. So Spinning Wheel Kick, again, the Gi is not the best equipment for a Ranger, and also there is a Bloodrot arrow and Toxicity. I think Toxicity Red is somewhat a bait, and I think it's a great card to get when the pack is pretty weaker, but I don't think you actively want to get the red Toxicity or any Toxicity at all. A red arrow, it blocks for 3, is good enough, you know. It's great to keep the pressure up, because just pitching a yellow and shooting a Bloodrot arrow for 5 most of the time requires 2 or more cards to get blocked with, otherwise the tempo gain you get is insane. So here we see a trench, and the rest of the pack is pretty mediocre. There's a Peace of Mind yellow, there's a Tarpy Trap. Tarpy Trap is not so great. Even the Frailty Trap has to be better than the Tarpy Trap. So sacrificing a pretty weak card or a yellow card for Tarpy Trap is pretty great, because the Tunic is the premium chest equipment for Rangers, so I'm super happy that I got to pick that. It's really relevant because a lot of times you might not have any more resources as you've blocked or played your non-attacks, and you get the one resource to shoot your arrow, which is super important. Okay, here again we go back into a weak pack. There is the Seeker Gloves equipment, and now I think we have a copy of Peace of Mind. But again, I don't care to pick the Seeker equipment. I prefer to pick a bad arrow or a blue that blocks for 3, rather than getting a somewhat better equipment. So here that's a pretty tough pick. It's between a card that blocks for 3 or a yellow arrow. I think I want to keep denying arrows because I don't feel like I have a huge need for blues, but Counterfight is one of the more premium cards, because being a non-attack is great because it always blocks 3 versus assassins, and that's pretty relevant. Okay, here we see the Ranger side's the Ranger side to be somewhat dry. There are not many great cards, or they just haven't opened, or they're not. It's just not a strong pack. But picking another red arrow has to be pretty good. Here the choice is hard because we might still want to get into Riptide, and actually the yellow Falcon Wing is one of the ways to extend a turn, while the other arrow is pretty weak by itself. It's really relevant on the Ranger to have a way to extend your hand, to be able to attack with 3 cards or 4 cards, and that's why Falcon Wing is pretty great. So here again it's between Seek Horizon Yellow and the Skybound Salt. I don't think I ever care about picking the boots that give Goregion to Rangers. So from that aspect it's between a yellow extender or a yellow arrow, but I think the numbers on the Seek Horizon Yellow are not good enough, because doing a 4 card play that attacks for 9 is pretty weak. Most of the time you will be looking to block and either pitch and just attack for with a single arrow. And also we want to be able to fight off against fatigue, and also I've found that, and sometimes versus Azalea, it's relevant to have a high number of arrows in your deck. Okay, this is a pretty dry pack. I'm really not happy that there are no Ranger cards left. So that was either a weak pack or a card with few Ranger cards, and I'm really not happy about this pack. So Scout the Periphery Blue has to be a good filler. We don't have any Seeker equipment. Peace of Mind Blue most of the time is not good enough, so Seek the Horizon Blue. Scout the Periphery Blue sometimes might get played, so it's good to have access to this card. At the moment we are in a pretty weird spot, because we do not have a clear image if we want to go into Riptide or if we want to go into Azalea, because we haven't really seen the free yellow and blue Spire Snipings yet. Speak of the Devil, here is the Spire Sniping, here is the headpiece, so we are pretty happy that we see these cards. Wayfinder's Crest has to be the best equipment, the best headpiece equipment for Ranger, and now it's pretty clear that we are gearing towards playing an Azalea deck. We are not super happy about it because we do not have enough cards that look at the top of our deck, but we have the 2 or 3 cards that will give us one of the great turns that Azalea needs to get ahead in the tempo. Again, a pretty dry pack, great Ninja cards. See, the Horizon Blue is great for Ninja, Salken G is great for Ninja, so we just get the most playable blue card, because on turn 1 or on turn 2 you might be able to pull off a blue Seek the Horizon turn, otherwise you most of the time are just going to pitch it in order to play your turn. We got some great cards in pack 2, but it feels like a lot of people are fighting over Ranger still. It's not as open as we would hope it to be. Someone definitely pivoted into Ninja, because it's not that billion Ninja cards are still throwing around, and here it's the same idea, that if we want the yellow Peace of Mind or another blue arrow that blocks for 3, since we have no Seeker equipment, we do not prioritize the Peace of Mind too highly, and also we also already have 2 traps. So since I have 2 traps, I don't care too much about getting that. So here that's a pretty mediocre pack. The yellow Debilitation might only be into the more fatiguey matchups, while the blue Ravenous Rabble will almost never get played. Another blue Ravenous Rabble. Okay, here it looks like the Ninja players do not care too much, and we even get the last big Bones of Ancestry. I mean, the blue 0 costs are pretty premium for Ninja, so we are really not happy that the players to our right do not care about picking these cards. So it feels like that the Ninja is open, so we are really afraid because the Ninja might devastate this draft. But so far we have a pretty decent deck. We have some powerful tools, not too many. We have a few ways of looking at the top cards of our deck. The thing that we are severely lacking though is we need a few more red arrows. We did not have nearly enough, as many as we wanted to. We have one Bloodroot Arrow, one Withering Shot, one Spire Sniping, which is not great, and that's it. That's probably the weakest thing about our deck at the moment, because even though we have the premium non-attacks, we do not have enough of the good premium red arrows. And that feels slightly bad, because it feels like Ranger is not super open. It feels like a player from the other side of the table probably went into Ranger, all in into Ranger, and it's probably cutting a few more cards than we would have loved to see. So here we want to prioritize the red arrows pretty highly, and speak of the devil, there is a Bloodroot arrow and the Death Touch. So Death Touch is great, but because we are looking towards to play Azalea, and we have, I think, 3 non-attacks already that only care about arrows, we cannot really, it's not really easy to play Death Touch, and also probably we are going to be an Azalea deck, not a Riptide one. So even though Death Touch is an insane card, I think there is no card at the moment that we would be picking over Infecting Shot Red. I cannot think of any card that we would pick over Infecting Shot Red at this stage of the draft. So, okay, it looks here that there are some okay choices. Widowmaker Red is great, Seeker Boots is great, the second Scarp. So Widowmaker is one of the better arrows, especially for Azalea. I'm really happy to see this card, but to be completely honest, I'm expecting, or I hope this card to wheel. It's not a premium card if you're not Azalea, it's not a great card into Riptide, and Seek the Horizons is one of those cards that will give us the opportunity to be an offensive with 4 card hands. And it's one of the easiest way to trigger Azalea, and because we are somewhat lacking that, that's why I decided to pick the Seek the Horizon over the Widowmaker. Because I want versus Assassins, especially, to be able to go full into the offense, and instantly we get back our money because of that, because instantly we see another red Widowmaker. There is a yellow Scout the Periphery here, but I don't think I care too much about that, because again, we are severely lacking red arrows at the moment, and premium red arrows, and Widowmaker has to be one of the better ones. So I'm really happy that I get to pick the Widowmaker here, and I have some weaker cards that might wheel later. So far we feel great. I think the second pack was pretty weak, but I really hope that we get our money back on the third pack here. So there is a Wreck Havoc. It's one of those okay cards to run. If there was any red arrow, I think it's clearly better than the Wreck Havoc, but shooting a yellow Widowmaker, if it doesn't have Dominate, it's super weak. And you know, Wreck Havoc is a decent card to have, because sometimes you just want to set up a turn so you can just block with a single card, play the Wreck Havoc and Arsenal, either a non-attack or a card for Arsenal and Arrow to be ready for next turn. So it's pretty relevant to have access to at least a few 2/4/6 cards. If there was any red arrow, I would be super happy. And now we got rewarded, finally a powerful card got into our hands during the middle stages of the pack. So I'm super happy that I see a Fletcher Red Tail Red. It's another premium non-attack. So I'm really happy that we get to see this card at this stage, and suddenly I start feeling great, because we might get a few more red arrows, and now our deck is looking great. We have 5 premium non-attacks. We have 2 Bloodroot arrows, we have a red Widowmaker, we have the cards we need, we have 2 Seek the Horizon red, we have the cards we need in order to be able to execute these big powerful turns that the Ranger needs in order to gain the tempo and keep it until the game is over. Most of the time you want to do at least one big turn in order to keep the tempo, because if you are on the offense, you can pretty much, we have the amount of arrows to deck out our opponent, and that's why we want to keep picking all these premium red and yellow arrows. And here Ravenous Rabble is great, but the Infecting Shot yellow is almost the second best arrow, because Infecting Shot is still pretty great Infecting Shot is still attacking for 4, and most of the time we'll need at least 2 cards to block with, so it's a pretty fine choice to have, even though we don't need Raven Swabble since we already have 2 copies of Red Seek the Horizon. So here we have a lot of choices. So Destructive Debilitation is great, we already have the head equipment, so, and there are some yellow arrows. I picked the Frailty Trap because I think the rest of the cards are not so premium, and it's great to having access to another trap since we have 0 copies of Peace of Mind at the moment, because it's also a great way to fight off against Benji and Assassins. So here we go towards the late stages of the draft. We just are going to pick fillers. Withering Shot Yellow is a good enough card again. It's probably one of the better yellow cards that you can have access to. It still blocks for 3. It's just that you can still shoot it for 4 and needs 2 cards to block, otherwise it turns off the daggers. So it's pretty great. And here, yes, we finally see the Widowmaker Red wheeling to us. So we are super happy that this happened here, that we got the second red Widowmaker. So here we are looking pretty happy with our deck at this stage of the game. So it's pretty clear that we are going to head towards running Azalea rather than something else. So another yellow Sedation Shot, it's slightly better than the other arrow that only gets +1, so even though Sedation Shot is one of the weaker arrows, it's fine. So here I think we have a pretty clear, powerful Azalea deck. We have a lot of cards that are great to use, but it's still the Ranger factor. Even though we have a huge number of arrows, if we do not perform some great turns, we might get simply outvalued by some Assassins and or Ninjas. So this is a great spot to be in. We felt like Ranger was open enough for us to fight over, and it looks like we won that fight. We gave the signals to players to our left, at least. The players to our left wanted to communicate with us that Ranger was open. So that was pretty great. So we end up having an Azalea deck. I'm not sure if at some point during this draft we should have considered going into Riptide more. I don't think we've seen the cards to make Riptide work, and we even get a Spire Sniping Yellow for the finishing touch. So we ended up doing 2-1 with this Azalea deck. We ended up doing a 2-1 with this Azalea deck. The deck was pretty great. We lost the round 1 versus an Arakni player that managed to pull off some great turns, and we didn't have the tempo to kick him out of the game, because that's something that happens a lot with Assassins. Arakni was the first one to execute a huge turn, and we lost that game. And afterwards we clearly had the better deck against the other 2 opponents. We faced off against an Uzuri and a Katsu, and our deck was pretty superior. Katsu ended up doing a 2-1 also, and there was a single Katsu in the draft, so he had a pretty powerful deck. But the other Ninja player that started being Ninja during the earlier stages of the draft managed to 3-0. So it was a pretty fun experience. I really hope you guys enjoyed the whole process. So I'll see you guys next time, and thanks a lot for dropping by. See ya!